to 131.
And we on episode 93 of the Lyrical Ones podcast. As Alfluent is sharing the number of episodes in Dragon Ball Super in which I became totally
No,
disengaged with
no,
my
no, no,
favorite band of
not
characters.
the total episodes, just the Tournament of Power.
How many
The,
episodes?
the Tournament of Power went from episode 77 to 131.
Yeah.
That's
And
episode
that
77 and episode 131. So between the two of them is 54 episodes, but you got to include those two episodes as well. Bruh, that's a year in a month. That's 13 months.
in that period of time, I watched season 1 of One Punch Man about 50 times.
Tournament of Power in Dragon Ball Super is 56 months.
You see how we start off this episode. I watched One Punch Man about 50 to 60 times. 12 episodes, 12 great, immaculate episodes. I watched about 50 or 60 times in the span of the Tournament of Power.
When you think about it, though, Dragon Ball has been doing what Apple has been doing the whole time.
I
We
kind
gonna
of
give
want to
you
say that, but I kind of don't because
we can
Apple's
give you
been a
the
little bit
same
more.
we gonna give you the same thing, but a little different. We gonna give you the same thing again, but a little different. Then we gonna give you the same thing, and you ain't even gonna like it, but we gonna give it to you, and it's gonna be different. It's not what you wanted, but it's a little bit of what you wanted. They just brought back the iPad. I mean the iPod 2 years ago, a year ago.
Look,
They just
in my
they
life,
just brought it back. The
the
iPod
iPod,
Touch,
I got it.
the new one or the old one? That's the new one. The old one, you can do Wi-Fi calling on it.
Man, can I do that on here? Let me see. I'm a
You
Wi-Fi call
probably
myself.
you probably could.
Wait, where my call button? I threw that thing away. I could for surely FaceTime. That's for sure.
Yeah, yeah. This
Look,
is before FaceTime, before they had FaceTime. The iPod Touch had a camera. The
no, I mean
iPod
I
Touch,
remember. I've been an avid Apple user, consumer, connoisseur for the past since 2005.
right? I'm
2005.
saying
No, no, I take that
Dragon
back.
Ball,
It wasn't mine. I was at a facility that had it.
Dra-
2007.
Dragon Ball,
It
Dragon
ain't the
Ball
same.
Z,
Listen,
Dragon Ball GT.
Gohan. No, Dragon Ball GT. See, that's like when Steve Jobs left Apple. That's what that is. That's exactly what that is. Okay, let's get that right.
Right. That's the Retina thing or whatever.
That's when they
That's the
I
lightning
don't even
cable.
know. That's the lightning cable. That's the lightning cable.
Right. They said we gonna throw something snazzy at you. It's gonna really
It's
jazz
going
up
yeah.
really jazz
Yeah.
up your charging. It ain't gonna charge no faster. It wasn't actually lightning at all.
Yeah, you're right about that. There was no lightning involved in that process. Nothing was fast or quick about it. It was like,
That was
who are
Super
you
Saiyan
fooling?
4 for nothing.
Yeah, Super Saiyan 4 for nothing. Absolutely right. For
We
nothing.
just go we just gonna bring back the tail.
We're gonna we're gonna turn you into a kid. For what? Why would you do that? Why would you waste my time?
Don't y'all
Which is
miss
why I
being
was like,
don't y'all miss Kid Goku? Let's bring back the Kid Goku. Lightning cable.
man, look,
That's the
look.
that's the that's the trackpad with no click button. That's the
Oh
laptop.
my goodness. No,
That's
no,
the
that's when they had the mouse with no button. When they had a mouse that was just a whole button.
oh yeah,
That's what
yeah,
that
that
is.
too. It's the same, but it's not like you can't even double tap on the trackpad
You know how
on
many
the
people
lap
would try and click
on the
and
MacBook.
drag and be
Uh,
struggling? People be struggling. I'm trying to grab all these files right now. We just went through a situation like this just not like the other day.
Nah, the button is below that, son. The button is
Look,
below that.
when it come to Dragon Ball, when it come to DBZ or
56.
whatnot, to me, in my experience, like Gohan, I thought
55
was
episodes.
I thought it was going on. I thought Gohan was gonna be the one, and then all of a sudden, they like we get to a point where it's like we bringing it back, and it's like a movie, and I go to the movie, and I'm like, oh, this movie's dope. But why Gohan getting treated like this?
Are you
Why
watching
they treat
Naruto? All right,
Actually,
you
I've been
finish
taking
it?
a break from Naruto because
All right, all right.
I'm determined to watch filler. I'm determined. People be like, "Don't watch the filler." Oh no, I'm watching the filler. It's a part of the experience for me. And
Yeah, I watch all the fillers.
and
That's where
right
you get some
now,
of. That's where you get some of the mundane Japanese comedy and culture.
yeah,
That's
oh yeah,
only there because Japanese folks think it's funny.
exactly. It's to serve the audience to keep them engaged until they come back with a story. Exactly, and I love Japanese culture, so I have no problem with it. But what I've actually been watching a lot of is Kotaro Lives Alone. That's what I've been watching. That show. It's so endearing. It's on Netflix. I like it's this little boy. He lived by himself. That's the whole story. That's
That's
not
the
the
new
whole
one, right?
story. It's a new one. It is. And
Yeah,
I've been
I ain't
watching it.
started watching it. I ain't started watching it yet. How do you get to that before like half the other stuff that we're trying to get you to watch?
I done took so many breaks from so many things. Like One Piece really did the worst amount of damage to me because I remember I was like, oh, they had a time skip. I'm taking a time skip too. And I'm just gonna get stronger. But my anime style and watching habits have been totally blown to pieces because
Blown to
yep,
pieces.
Kotaro lives alone. That's what I've been watching a lot. I've been watching that a lot. Like I was watching the Oran Boys Club, and then I stopped watching that halfway through, and then I went to Kotaro, and I'm almost through Kotaro, and I'm like, man, this better never end. This is so
All right,
sweet, heartwarming, and deep, endearing. This little boy live alone. It's hard
all
out
right.
here.
Now, after you watch that, you watch Ranking of Kings, and it's a level up from whatever you watching.
I'll probably go back to Oran Boys Club.
They got two characters that's mute.
Who characters?
Two
That's
characters
what's
that's
up.
mute, and
Oran High School Host Club.
everybody knows it.
Oran High School Host Club. That's what I was watching. I'm gonna go back to that. I'm about to go right back to it.
And they got a character that's deaf.
They got a lot going on.
I told you it's a level up.
Thinking of Kings. I've actually
Rank,
heard about this.
rank Ranking of Kings, because that's all you need to hear about. By itself is trumping fourth season, final season, part two of Attack on Titan.
Wow. What?
Uh, fourth season, like, just be real. Like, the fourth season Attack on Titan is great, but it's riding the coattails of season three.
I mean,
I mean, I ain't
what's
gonna
wrong
lie
with
to
that?
you.
I mean, politics, war, life.
I love the commentary and the hopelessness of Attack on Titan because I basically not gonna get it anywhere else. There's nothing more deflating, more depressing, more sad, more dichotomous. There's like there is no black and white. It is all gray and bloody. It's basically right. War is not good. War is not good ever for anyone, and they're showing it to you, right, all the way through. Like like they said recently, right? You can't take right the violence out of man, right? And so I I appreciate that aspect of reality that Attack on Titan is given in this medium and platform. But every single uh, character of the cast and Ranking of Kings is dealing with at least a pair of contradictory emotions. At least two. And they show them explicitly, thoroughly, and intentionally. So this one that you watching, right? I'm sure it's real. Kotaro lives alone. I'm sure it's fire. I'm planning on watching it this week. I just added it to my to my list, and I go
Mm-hmm.
through anime. But did you cry in the first episode?
Listen, okay,
Did you
we
cry at the
getting
second
there.
episode?
I think I did on the third or the fourth. I think I teared up a bit.
Ranking King start right away. Ranking King say, "Come on, they, I'm Rick James. Come at you like this. They pull you in. They come with the aura right away.
Okay, well,
But
I'm gonna
right
have to
in the
check this out.
right. So in the things that you taken a break from, now what have you chosen to focus on now since you got
Transition.
time to watch anime?
So, well, they see that's the thing. That's a funny thing. So, anime is like the turn down. Like it is the time in the day where I transition from a busy mind to a relaxed, calm mind. Like anime is the part where I usually meditate. I tried to meditate or read something before I watch some anime. Because I try and pick anime that's going to help me transition into sleep, the point of sleeping. Something that is I can follow, something that calms me down, brings me down. If it's Attack on Titan, then that's probably the weekend. But time, man, time. My focus, hence the word, has shifted greatly since March 4th. I'm saying that in reference to the fact that I've said this to people and maybe they pick up on it. Maybe you'll figure it out too. I'll be super explicit at some point in this conversation about it, but having your parachute prepared. Your parachute is for you. No one else can determine what the parachute is. You have to find out what the parachute is for yourself. But to take that leap of faith. I was watching the Benny the Butcher interview today, and he had brought up the reference of people who hustle and want to do music, and he was like, "You got to pick one or the other. You're not doing both." And he was like, "It ain't even got to be hustling. You probably got a 9 to 5 that's getting in the way." Now, Benny the Butcher, Tana Talk 4, great album. Griselda as a whole, Conway, God Don't Make Mistakes. They they have been the past 2 years the focal point of my motivation. Now, I always talk about discipline, and discipline is necessary and it's important at all times. But I will not dismiss, minimize motivation, inspiration as it finds me. And Griselda has been that. West Side Gun, Conway, and Benny the Butcher, because of what they represent. They represent a group of people from a part of the United States that isn't always seen. I remember people used to scoff. I remember somebody told me they was from West New York. And I talked to somebody from Brooklyn. I said, "Where's West New York?" And they, "Man, he lying. He from Buffalo." And he was like saying it like such like a put down. He was like, and if for those from the Bay, right? It's the equivalent of saying like in the past, people would be from, I'm gonna say it, people would be from other areas. Usually it'd be Daly City, South City, San Bruno, Coma. They would be from those areas. Instead of representing where they from, they would say they from San Francisco. Now it's different. People own where they from. They take pride in where they from. When I was
Livermore.
growing up, man, talk about being out the way, right? Now for someone on the East Coast, right? it's easy to confuse and conflate all these things because New York is a state, but New York is also a city. It's a metropolitan area. It consists of all these different parts. It's an expansive area. Now,
And it's a state.
it's a state, right? So for me, I was like, I always had that in the back of my mind. And so Benny the Butcher was the first of the three that I ever knew because I was more familiar with Benny the Butcher. He had a little bit more relevancy, but it wasn't to the point of what it is now. So this interview and who they are, right, being three men who rap in a way that is such a contrast to everything else, right? And in a lot of ways it's not, but for a lot of people it is because people have become accustomed to what is the purveying, overly abundant, saturated, like accessible music of the time. And what they give is this very avant-garde, very intricate lyrical approach to their abilities in rap and music. And so he's having this interview and he's talking about, taking a leap of faith and not letting your 9 to 5 get in the way. And for me, I'll speak to the range of things, right? We're speaking to my perspective and my history of spending over the accumulation of 20 years in nonprofit within the Bay Area. Now, the nonprofit industrial complex within the Bay Area, especially San Francisco, is one of the most competitive, top of the peak, if you will, of the iceberg of what nonprofit industry is in the country, maybe the world. I'm saying that because I've sat in on calls and have been exposed to what it's like to be in other regions and hearing the level of need and the level of want from a lot of my peers around the country where they don't have access to or they don't have the same level of support financially that we do here in the Bay Area. I've been a part of that for 20 years. And let me tell you, the amount of racism, the amount of classism, the amount of indifference towards people who come from the community that all these organizations pride themselves on being a part of and changing and helping. I have learned that corruption is not a piece of the system, it is a piece of the people. We are all one people, we all exist as one. We all decide and make choices to do differently depending on whatever variable or circumstances fall upon you or you fall into. Again, those are two different things. What falls onto you, you have no control. At some point, you may realize you have control. Some people never do. The other is once you do, you then fall into certain things. You choose to fall into those things, right? So, in these different systems, right, we could talk about the medical system, the legal system, we could talk about education. I've been in nonprofit where there's been a piece of every one of those systems where I've been able to see firsthand a very unique sort of a set of circumstances to work with primarily families in the Bay Area and youth. And what I've come to learn is that for me, being someone who was impacted by these systems, who saw it as my responsibility to participate and take part, I've come to
Mhm.
learn the powers that be are less than likely to want to see someone like me rise up in the ranks to really provoke or have change that could be more sustainable, more enriching, more equitable for people that come from where I come from. That exists in every system. That's not exclusive to nonprofit. That exists in your political sphere, that exists in your schools, that exists in your hospitals, that exists not the systems, it's the people in the positions that continue to perpetuate, to be complicit to, that continue to uphold these outdated values that are harmful to people. And for me, it got to the crux where I was going to wait till the summer and I couldn't wait till the summer because my own personal,
Cause you gotta take over this summer.
I mean, it ain't even just about taking over the summer. It's also like being cognizant of my moral ethical standards and where I sit and knowing that my parachute, as prepared as it was in the moment, right? It could have been more prepared. But I knew that when I take this leap of faith, I'm banking on what this parachute's gonna do for me as I transition into my time being mine and not someone else's. My time, again, this is having the support. I'm a married man. I have family. There's a lot of different things that are happening that have given me space, given me the level of just ability and access to be able to do this, right? There's a lot that I've had to change in my habits and my behaviors. And, from saving money to being mindful of my skill set and how to really own and be confident in what I'm able to do, to being able to be compassionate and patient with myself to navigate the hurdles and the struggles of what it means to be a business owner. I've had a business for the past 2 years, and I've done more in the foundation and the building of having a structure than I have in actually being able to carry out the day-to-day operations. And now I do, in my day-to-day is even
Right.
more busy, is even more impactful in terms of what I'm learning and how I'm engaging and what I'm pursuing. It's led to a lot of great opportunities. I mean, y'all can see visually, this ain't the same as episode 90, let alone episode 87 or episode 1. Visually, things have changed, but that was me walking in the path and in the direction of what my heart was telling me I needed to do. Now, it's not to say that I'm flawless in my ability, but I in my mind see it no other way in terms of me moving in the direction of my opportunities being something that I'm responsible for versus being subservient to a system that I can no longer agree with. For my peers, there's a lot of my peers right now who are in the same position I am, who are in the same crisis of their moral and ethical standards are constantly being held over their head because they're like, I need a check, I need to get paid, I'm trying to make money. And at the same time, they're using the money to help transition them out of this field because they see it's not sustainable for people who are from the community. It is not sustainable. I mean, there are some who are making a way, and either they've done the work or they've been selected, right? I'm not going to sit up here and confuse this or that. It's one or the other, right? They've done the work, they've gotten to a point where they've been given access, but it's not as many as you would hope or what you would think. And I've seen it myself. I see who they allow and who they give permission to, and I see what people have to endure and what they have to go through to even be considered, to be in the consideration of. They want you to be a certain way a lot of times. I'm not saying it's just a blanket statement all the time. I'm saying in this arena, as many arenas, even as we see when it comes to Supreme Court, right? We're looking at a time where history can be made. And the way that it's being treated is the constant scrutiny of your identity, right? Ketanji Brown Jackson has is being interviewed by what would be her peers or other political figures and people that support, and there's people who obviously want to scrutinize every facet of her character, her being, her just who she is. Now, that same thing exists in many arenas because I've had a cumulative 20 plus years of experience in nonprofit, from being a youth who was a youth worker to being an adult who's been able to participate in the development of programs, overseeing programs, facilitating all kinds of different things. And to say the level of disrespect, the level of harm that I faced, I come to realize in this society there are some truths that, as much as I don't like, the only way that I can change it is if I participate in it.
Right. Right.
Now, I'm not saying, right, people always say, oh, you change it from within. How many years we gonna wait for somebody to change things from within? Cause me, I'm done
Can't
waiting.
do it.
I'm done playing this fallacy of what the concept of being an American is, when the foundation of this country is built on the backs of blood and harm and violence. Now, I'm not going into that territory where I'm planning on perpetuating the same. I'm saying I'm totally doing things differently. I'm looking at the outliers. I'm looking at what are the sticking points of people, organizations, things that are going on where it is being done differently, right? I'm looking at what is in front of me, right? While also keeping in all times the proper scope of what has come behind me, what has passed. But not to redo and do the same things, it's to do differently. When I tell you I've been in protests, when I tell you that I've been in community organizing different matters and different policies, and to see the outcomes over the years of what has come to fruition, for every inch we get hit a foot back. To see my city and to see the level of diversity be dwindled away due to the capitalistic economic nature of the beast, and knowing that for me to really have any equitable stake to make a change means I got to play in that game, but I do not have the education, the resources, the access, or the lineage, right? Lineage. There's a lot of people who just born into situations and circumstances. So knowing all of that, I had to make a change, right? To know that there's going to be people who look like me or who will use what I look like as a means to identify some sense of oh, we're just supposed to be together because we look alike. But do we think alike? Do we do as one? Or are we doing as many? Right? Are you using me because you see me as, oh, well, he's eloquent and he's well spoken and he shows up and he knows how to present and he knows how to make people laugh and he's approachable and he's light skinned and he does all these things and he's black and he's brown and oh, his last name, blah, blah, blah.
He could be John Legend for us.
Not today. Not today. Not ever. Right? It's one of those things where it's so crazy how there's so many unspoken truths, and the trauma that I've been through has helped inform me, right? The traumatic experiences where it's been either my health, my life, right? Life or death circumstances and situations, extremely harmful situations to my psyche, my mental state, my mental health. All of these different experiences have shown me when I need to be aware, how alert I need to be when I move into certain situations and certain things are said or done or mannerisms are executed and acted upon, where I start to realize, yeah, you full of crap. When I see how you treat people, when I see how you do families, when I see that you play into the bureaucratic structure, regardless of what you look like, regardless of what merits you have, regardless of your experience, when I see you in the moment, I can tell the difference between someone who is genuinely here to do right by the people and when someone's here just to collect a check and keep it moving. I can tell when someone sees people as resources and assets and as something that can be disposed of, that's treated like capital and livestock versus people with human feelings, with souls, with hearts, with aspirations, with dreams. I've seen it. I don't need to fall in line and play the game and do it the way it's been done because if that's the case, I'm just going to end up right where I was at, serving this larger system, this industrial complex that's more concerned with turning out services and products than it is to serve people and families. It is a big difference.
And
Like,
so in that difference, how you gonna switch it up? How you gonna give him the flip mode?
man, mine okay, so I told you about Griselda and how they became such an inspiration and motivation, right? And that's the
Right.
framework
That
of
leap that
music, right?
that leap that
Like
leap of faith.
that leap of faith, but also that firm belief in what you're doing and how to present it to people in a way where it's accessible and it's carving out its own lane, right? I mean, come on. I'm wearing a mask with go to you, right? Again, back to the idea of protecting your anonymity, your identity. My face is not a commodity. And there's nothing wrong with people that choose to have their face be a commodity, but the mask is the commodity. The music is the surface, right? This big difference between what I'm doing. I'm already coming out the gate in with every level of intention to do things different, right? Everything is done with a sense of intentionality because I've been through it, I've seen it, I've learned, I've listened, I've really taken in the experiences of others and refined it in my approach. So doing things differently is thinking of How do you take the dynamics of wealth and create a system that is sustainable for people to be able to partake in, right? And that brings me to my next point of inspiration, Dan Price. Dan Price, the CEO, who's changed the game in terms of being a millionaire to then making equitable wages across the board for all his employees when he decided that everyone's going to get paid the same amount of money regardless of the position. People scoffed at him, said he was wrong, said this isn't sustainable, this isn't something that will last. And all he's done is expand and grow his business with more people that are participating and joining not just his company, but his movement. This is a man who was a millionaire who's decided, you know what, I'm going to try, I'm going to give everyone a livable, sustainable wage. And all that's happened is his business has grown. To me, the framework and the model is right there. Someone who's doing things drastically different in the face and of opposition of what the norm is, right? People always tell you that's the way it is. And this man literally is showing you, no, there's another way. So for me, it's about adopting that model where it's not about me being able to live beyond my wildest dreams. It's about me being able to have a living wage that I can help others, other artists, other people, other creatives, other community members to adapt the same model so they can have access to the same outcomes, right? Because I'm not one to hold back. Oftentimes, I'm going to share and give as much as I can. Everyone who knows me knows that. Everyone who's been a part of the process of my growth, my life, they know as many times as I may fumble, every time I do, I will be more than happy to offer how it is that I fumbled so they don't have to do the same mistakes. Let's do new mistakes. Let's create new problems. Because then when we solve all those problems, there's something new on the horizon, right? I was told this in nonprofit before by someone who I once looked up to, and they said, you know, that the philosophy oftentimes is why solve the problem if you could just prolong it and get paid off of it? And I'll always struggle with that because I would fight tooth and nail. And I realized, oh, that's right. I'm the one who has this belief because I'm from here, right? I remember what that corner used to look like. I remember when that store used to be over there. I remember when they used to live across the street. I remember. So it hits different because for this person, they coming from the East Coast to the West Coast to seek an opportunity. Again, the nonprofit industrial complex is gigantic in San Francisco. So people come from all over the world to come and feel belonging, to feel safe, to come and be a part of a movement. But never once do they take the time to listen to the people that are from here and really take into account what it means to be from here, to support the movement that already exists from the people that are here. Right. So it's like, okay, if this is the game and this is how it goes, when I can point to every finger, every now it's every Zoom, right? It used to be every room. I could just go into a room and be like, oh, that person, this person, that person, they ain't from here. But they all the ones with the titles. They the ones that get to make the change. They're the ones buddy buddy and smug with everybody else who's at the top. Right? It used to be the room. Now it's the Zoom. I could look at the Zoom and be like, ain't none of you from out here. Why, why aren't you equipping those from here with the knowledge, the ability, the practice to take care of themselves? Right? I remember so many times we would go into these trainings and they'd be like, it's a conflict of interest if you do this, that, and the third. And I'm like, I work in programs where I serve my own family. You want to talk about a conflict of interest? I remember we sat in a room and there was somebody that had a student, a youth who was engaged in the system, right? When I say the system, I mean incarcerated youth, right? He lived next door to the family. When you talk about the exception, you talk about the outliers. The people who work in the community are the exception. They are the outliers. Instead of being given the tools to be able to take care and restore and repair their own people, they're constantly told that's not the way. But that's because the way has been determined by people who don't come from the community. It's been constantly perpetuated or situated or constructed or mitigated by those who have no basis of understanding of what adversity means for the ones they serve. Right? Their adversity comes from another country, comes from another state, another city. You don't speak the same language. You don't talk the same talk. You don't have any ties to what's across the street or next door. 9 times out of 10, you commute to where you want to make change. And then when it comes to the people you serve, you less engaged to care about what they're going through and more concerned about how it's going to make you look so you could put a picture on your LinkedIn to make it look like you care about all these different colorful faces.
Arsenio, in that acknowledgement of the negative bias and the lack of investment that exists in the system, and then you acknowledge also that it exists in other parts of society and industry. What type of education do we need to share, like you said, about where you may have fallen or made a misstep or learned a lesson that it can be passed on? What type of education is necessary so that folks are not baptized by fire, basically, and knocked over the head with a rude awakening that there is a limit or a wall or a ceiling or a closed door that you will run into at some point because someone else who doesn't look like you or doesn't think like you or doesn't come from the same area, who doesn't have any skin in the game and community or the independent circuit or in the grassroots circuit that wants to see you do well. How do we
I'm gonna
show?
tell
How
you.
do we show them? How do we show them the way?
Well, okay, because the way ain't for everybody. First,
Right, 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 right.
first
But
and
I mean,
foremost.
just right. So like
So this
just
is
like
this is
right.
this is this
Just
is
like an
some of the
interview, right?
components.
Just like a Griselda interview, right? It's like everybody's not gonna hear what you heard from the interview, right? Everyone is
Yeah,
not
no, no,
go
no, no,
right.
definitely,
Not
definitely.
everyone's not even go seek out the interview, right? So if they're not even seeking out the interview, right, then it probably ain't for them.
So this is what I say to someone that would want to learn from my fumbles, right? Number one is you have to be willing to play into the meritocracy, right? The meritocracy, it gives you access. Me, I didn't play into the meritocracy. The most that I played into the meritocracy was when I was at a nonprofit. It gave me an opportunity to go into a certificate based program, right? So that means this isn't a degree based program, right? I'm getting a certificate for a specific skill set. And that skill set was based in music. I got that. I remember I got that based off of the fact that I had did an internship that then turned into a job that then turned into giving me opportunity access to develop program, which then helped me develop relationships and earn the trust of this, San Francisco State, right? They had a campus. It's called the College of Extended Learning now, Campus of Extended Learning back then, and they gave me the opportunity to get a full ride and give scholarships out to other people because I earned the trust of the people there. Now, outside of that education, I'm gonna put and flip the script because as much as you can, as the person listening, I'm also gonna say if you are a parent and you have children, you have to be very intentional with how you raise them and what you teach them as they grow, right? And I can say this with another level of confirmation and affirmation because the Kanye West documentary showcases this in a multitude of ways, in a spectrum of ways. When you have the parental support of someone who has a level of stability, and even if you don't, it's not to discourage you, but it is to say that you might need to try and figure out what stability looks like for you and your household and your family because it's not to say it's accessible to everyone, but you have to be willing to want to look for it and search for it because your child is going to need that level of support. Now, I was given a level of freedom and independence to do and see as I wanted. And what that ended up doing was it prevented me from developing a discipline to engage in certain systems where the meritocracy, right, was something that I constantly seen as a hypocrisy, right, not as a tool. And it is not mutually exclusive. They can be both,
Right.
right? The hypocrisy can exist within the meritocracy, but the meritocracy is necessary to grant you access to earn the favor of the outdated ones who value this very archaic system that will then grant you in it's like a rite of passage. It's like, oh, you went through that. I know I went through that. Now we have a level of understanding and buy-in, right? Now this
So stability for you then would have looked like some of that freedom that you experience, but also then some structure.
I mean, it would have been a feeding into the structure of this system that would then grant me access to more doors, because that was a big hindrance. Is when they look at your resume and they see this wealth of experience, they refer to the education instead of the education is the experience, right? Because I remember so many times after the fact, right? Like I have friends who are therapists now, and we reflect back on our old jobs, and they're like, you know, that they really had us as therapists, right? We just weren't, we were unlicensed, right? We're paid the bare minimum because we don't have the license, we don't have the certification, we don't have the degrees, but the outcome, the practice, the approach was the same, and that happens all over the place. There's so many places where people are taken advantage of because of their ignorance, because of their unawareness, right? So when I say the education and the meritocracy and the hypocrisy, you to me it's about creating the transparency and saying that what the purpose of this is for is not necessarily the purpose of what you see. Because I also have friends who went into school and they owe a lot of money, and a lot of the driving force behind the opportunities and choices that they've made has been, I need to pay off the school loan, right? I have to make money to pay off this investment that I made, right? Now, the crux of it, right? If you are in the nonprofit industry, I'm not trying to discourage anyone from participating and learning and engaging and doing their thing, because there's a lot of incredible people who are still there. But I know for me, in terms of monotony, in terms of insanity, I've had 20 years to see how things evolve and how things change. And we had a once in a lifetime event take place where COVID and George Floyd had happened. And I remember thinking, oh, of course the camera want to die. It's okay. We gonna make it work. Oh, now I want to come back. Okay. So the thing is, right? Thinking about that situation and what had taken place, I was like, this is it. This is our opportunity for something new and something different. And there was people who never once said anything about being involved socially, where they become involved socially. And so to me, I was like, we're gonna make a difference. It's gonna change. It's gonna be different. Well, it's the year 2022 and ain't nothing changed, right? Ain't nothing changed. If you telling me something changed, I mean, I'm gonna ask you where. Please show me, because the changes that you speak to, those are the same changes that we've been getting. That same incremental 1.5 inch, 0.5%. You know, this is residuals of what has gone on in society for many, many years, right? So to me, I don't see much of a difference, right? I see what has taken place is people have given themselves to what the system has been, and then are saying, because, oh, something drastic has happened and we've gotten some leeway in some fashion or another, oh, it's different. No, it ain't different. It's the same, right? And that's the part where I'm like, I can't no longer get behind that. I can no longer find myself in agreement or accordance to it, because what ends up happening is we're getting put in position in situations where we we find more of the exceptions than we find the norm. And what I mean by that is, oh, you tokened. We gonna tokenize you, right? We gonna tokenize you and use you to our advantage to make sure that we are seen as, it becomes the performative gesture. Oh, you here and you black, so we gonna give you this title. But do you have any want to be in this position? And are we gonna equip you with the skills necessary to carry out this new role, this new duty? Or are we just gonna say we did it and use you as a face to put on a pamphlet, or just to put you in a video, or to have you a part of a panel? And then the same things continue and persist, and there's no real change.
In that same
Because
vein, would you say that LeBron James is a token or a spearhead?
I mean, depends on who's beside him, right? Because again, right, he's in the NBA. where I see a lot of his moves as him spearheading and trying to lead change, right? He has to play within a larger structure of American society where there's people who are constantly trying to belittle and take away from him. And yeah, they find ways to utilize who he is because it's a co-brand, right? It's not as LeBron does not exist without the NBA. And the NBA today, in a large part, who's to say what it would be, but it wouldn't be the same without him, right? And that goes for a lot of the superstars, right? That goes for a lot of, you look at Kyrie, right? They had this man in the crowd of a game he couldn't play in because of the stature and what he represents by making the choices that he's made, right? Even to this degree now where all these restrictions are being taken away and lifted, there's a, I mean, you talk about having a level of power, you talk about having a level of influence. There's a lot to be said about athletes where, yeah, the world is changing, but again, it's that incremental stuff. This ain't no, look, LeBron is definitely a spearhead in many ways in changing things and making things, right? But is that something that is league wide, or is that LeBron being one person in a sea of many? And that's not to minimize the changes that people have instituted, because again, most people have a want, they just don't have an awareness of what to do. But I'm more interested in how do we develop a system that helps people to engage in those ways, right? But then again, right, it's like it's the when you look at these interviews, right, some of these heartbreaking interviews where men are telling you the level of adversity and trauma and pain that they're experiencing and the coping mechanisms that are utilized, right? Sometimes it's hard to reach a person when they just get that big check and you try to tell them, hey, bruh, this is what's up. And it's like, no, 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 you're not in my position. You can't tell me what to do, right? And for some, it's easy to look at LeBron. It's like, well, Bron's doing it, so I got to do it, right? And then there's some who just stuck in the middle who don't even know which way is up because world's moving at a million miles per minute, and they're like, what do I do, right? So yeah, LeBron is a spearhead,
But he's also a token man.
but he's also tokenized in a lot of ways, right? It ain't to say that it's within his control. Maybe sometimes it is, but a lot of times it's not because again, it's a co-branded moment, right? NBA is the stage, LeBron is the star.
Right? And so I think, right, our challenge, right, as teachers, as artists, as creatives, as independents, right, is to acknowledge, right, our driving force and our motivation and the folks who come before us or are working alongside us. I think when we are silent about others who are working alongside us, even not with us, but alongside us in the same goal, same journey. I think when we highlight those folks, we allow ourselves to not be tokenized by bringing attention to, everyone that is working in the field or basically, pushing their own um, meter stick.
Yeah, I mean, it's a thing where there's things that are already good that could be greater, and what ends up happening a lot of times is you have people who have the means and resources to make these things better are just not aware. No one connects the dots, right? So then they become seen as the new lead in something that's already happening, right? I've been a part of a many different opportunities where I've seen like, oh man, this could be so much better, this could be so much different. But what ends up happening is people get put in a position where, oh, well, we don't need this thing because the new famous guy came and he did it again. He made something new. He made that thing that everybody want to see or everybody want to be a part of. Which then the thing that was working, that was good, that could have been greater, well, it gets thrown to the wayside. It gets forgotten. It's happened many, many times. It will happen many, many more. But that's the reality of what we see a lot of times. It's easy to look at who has the stage instead of looking at, oh, who's actually provoking change? Who's actually trying to seek and make a way? Who's trying to do things differently? And that's the thing that makes it tough because Yeah. You'll have spearheads innovating, and then you'll have spearheads who unknowingly just destroyed what was spearheading change. And that happens not just within like athleticism and being a star and being a celebrity. That happens across the board in so many different ways.
Yeah, that happens in leaders of the new school with Busta Rhymes. That happens with KRS-One not getting the shine that he deserved. That happens with Public Enemy and the pressure on for them to disband. That happens in with the NWA literally speaking for a region and a generation, Two Live Crew, right? Basically creating a reason for middle America and white corporate America and to create censorship
Yeah.
where they saw no need before. And right, it's not a real need, right? But when you talk about why people don't curse more or why people, you know, code switch instead of cursing all through the office, right? You say, oh well, you know, this war on language, right, is something, right, that has occurred over time, right, to belittle, to to dehumanize, right, to oppress, right, those with a variant of education when it comes to communicating, right? Because it's all English, and like if I say what is up or sup, they're both English because English is a derivative. American English is a derivative made up of slang words and colloquial, you know, used phrases, idioms, and everything, right? From the misspellings or right, like variant spellings, right? If our language is always being, you know, created and innovated and evolving, right? We should always be making room for people to tell their story that we may learn their language, right? And so when we start to say, oh, well, the spearhead is, right, changing the tone, right, changing the way things are done, and then we see it get snuffed out or shot down and then get replaced by a tokenized version and say, oh, well, we're not going to publicize this raw form, right? We go glorify this curated form that folks may then be less likely to panic, less likely to rebut, and more likely to stay the way they are. Like you said, right? 2022, and not much has changed.
Yeah, I mean, man, it's like I don't want people to be discouraged. I want people to feel empowered. Now, what does that mean? That means you have to believe in yourself. You have to believe no matter what is in front of you, no matter what obstacle lays in your pathway, that you can overcome it. So for me, it's always been about change, about creating um, a sense of justice, right? Now, justice, that can be a very broad term, and I've refined that approach through creating healing, right?
Yep.
Repairing and restoring and addressing harm, to not be complicit and complacent, right? If there's harm happening, I don't want to add on to it because I know what it means to be harmed and I know what it means to commit harm to others. So as I grow and I acknowledge that when I see harm happening, then I'm trying to institute change that's sustainable for people to be able to partake in. I'm not saying everyone has to believe in it. I'm saying it has to be accessible for everyone to have access to. Big difference. I'm not telling people how to live. I'm giving them access to opportunities on how to change their livelihood, how to change their living circumstances, their situation. accessibility is paramount, right? We see it when it comes to the disabled people who lack access, right? I remember being in a situation in one of these nonprofits that I appreciated the experience and the learning and what they did, but even them had discriminated in many ways against people who had disabilities, physical disabilities, right? Emotional or mental disabilities. I had witnessed it. Now, my approach was trying to address it and have communication and conversation, but because I'm always the entry level person and I'm not the
Mm.
person seen as, oh, you don't have enough experience or age or education to be in a supervisor role, right? I get knocked down. And my peers have had to witness this, right? I've been in unique circumstances in my experience, not saying that it's unique to everyone. I'm not saying that. I'm saying for me and what I've lived through. I've been in nonprofits where I've seen they needed a union to being at a nonprofit where they had a union. The biggest difference is how I showed up. And this is what was communicated and expressed to me by my peers, right? Because I've always been an outlier. I've always been an anomaly. I've always been one to stand out. So this what you see is me just owning it. This is me just in some ways having fun with it, being able to have a sense of humor about it in my ownership over it, where I'm not taking it too seriously. But when it comes to change, it is very serious for me because I've seen harm and how it's impacted those around me. So, me to advocate for my peers, for me to advocate for families, for me to advocate for the youth, for my community, it has always been paramount. It's always been in me ever since I was a child. I can remember when my family and my parents would argue, I'd be right in the middle of it to have this discourse as a mediator 4 or 5 years old saying this is what we gonna do. So I've only leaned further and further into who I am and owned it the more and more that I go in juxtaposition and opposition to what is the norm or what is seen as societally acceptable, because a lot of times what's societally acceptable is not necessarily healing, helpful. It's oftentimes harmful, disruptive, destructive in a way that does not add value to people's lives. And in many ways, it exploits them to be taken advantage of where they don't have any equity in it. They don't have any real ownership over it. And so, yeah, for me, I'm like, it's nothing to it but to get to it, find a way. And that's me saying to people, learn, be willing to accept, be open, take the time to heal yourself, find out what healing is for you, and know that there's going to be a multitude of differences in the journey, that there'll be people who don't agree or don't see it the same way. And that's okay. That's okay. Because for the ones who don't, you'll find the ones that do. You'll find power and strength in those numbers. Now, me taking this opportunity and leading in this direction where I'm like, yeah, I'm cool. I am not going to be subservient to a check. I had to find a way to build the parachute to give me and grant me access to make the leap of faith. It wasn't for some, it's just, hey, we don't need a parachute. We just jumping out the window. And if you can, maybe you'll be able to acknowledge what parachute you had around you that you really didn't have to do much to craft or build. But there's always some level of parachute involved, right? Whether it's societal, whether it's communal, whether it's family, whether it's all of the above, whether it's bits and pieces of all, whether it's the friends, the situation, the city, the circumstance, the timing. There's so many different components to how you don't hit the ground and just go splat when you take that leap of faith. And for some, they don't need to acknowledge it. It just happens. And for some, it's worth acknowledging because it's not, the scarcity, especially in today's society, if you live in the United States of America, a lot of times the scarcity is self imposed. In some areas, in some regions, it is truly scarce in terms of resources and necessities and the things that a person needs for their livelihood, for them to have a living condition that is manageable or sustainable. There's scarcity, but for a lot, it's how we torture ourselves. It's how we impose it on ourselves. How we sit there and we start to think and believe this this communal just consensus, self-deprecating, disrespectful, harmful. It feeds on our insecurities. I mean, we live in a society right now that has taken it up to a million in terms of how we can feed off of someone's personal perspective and how they view themselves. They feed off of the aspects that are toxic about it, right? And they take advantage, and that energy is a resource that is filled with compensation and financial gain. I mean, you can wipe away your ancestors off your face. You can literally get rid of your ancestors from your body if you choose to. It's been there, but it's ever more pressing and ever more relevant and prevalent and accessible, right? So to me, I'm saying all that for people to believe in themselves, to own themselves, to love themselves, to heal themselves, to ask, to be willing to communicate and seek the support that they need so they can start the journey of being the change, not only that they wish to see, but the change that needs to happen, right? There's people out there trying to save the world. And you got to ask yourself, who is asking for you to save them? It's a tough question to answer, but it's a necessary one to know.
But it's like you said, right? You got to tune into the injustice first, right? So if you're not listening, then you can't find out who's asking to be saved by you in particular, right? Because not
Exactly.
everybody's right. Everybody's asking for me to save them, right? They're asking for their friends and family. They're asking for the system to save them. They're asking for the hood to save them. They're asking for a baseball team or a basketball team to save them. They asking for religion to save them. They asking for food to save them. They asking for dependency and toxicity to save them. They asking for familiarity and destruction to save them. And if if we're not aware, we'll be misusing our energy, or misallocating our energy and our efforts and our right compassion to folks who right. It's why you don't want to be a captain, right? You don't want to be a save them because they don't want to be saved. And right, acknowledging right that aspect, and then saying, okay, where does it look like to save myself? Right, what does it look like to acknowledge my own troubles, and where can I save myself? Where can I take control and say these are the things that I'm doing, and I can rewind and regroup and say, right, this is what I'm gonna do first, right? This is the oxygen, and I'm gonna put over my mask that I'm gonna put over myself first, right? Find my parachute, and then help others find theirs, right? What's gonna breathe life back into them, and it's not an overnight thing. It's not a quick thing. It's not a 1 week turnaround thing. It's the journey of self actualization and right acknowledgement and saying right acceptance even. It's like I've been a self saboteur. I've been getting in my own way, and it's because of this imposter syndrome, or it's because of this adopted responsibility that I'm supposed to be saving this person or this group of people or this company or this organization because of the time I've invested here and how I feel about the time I've invested there. And really, the time that I've invested is the amount of time that I've been alive. And I've been investing that time in myself or I haven't been. And if I'm looking for a return on the investment in my own life, then I have to be invested in myself. And like you said, become more of who I'm supposed to be, become more myself, lean more into my my power, my influence, my skill set, my gifts, wherever they may lie, and find the purpose through the injustice that I've experienced. Because I wasn't born in Rwanda, so my injustice don't look like theirs. I wasn't born in Flint, Michigan, so my injustice don't look like theirs. I wasn't born in Oakland, so my injustice don't look like it was born in Oakland. Yes, I can take responsibility for every city that I know of, or I can say, okay, what's happening in my own life? What are the themes, and where am I going to see the most power and the most impact come from the losses that I've taken to see those triumphs, or the lessons that I keep learning, habitually learning, right? To be my greatest strength and my greatest skill set, right? If it's one hurdle that I keep stumbling over, then when I do finally get on the other side of it, there may be another one, but I may not spend 15 years learning the next lesson. It may be 3 years, it may be 7 years, but I'm looking forward to that next lesson. But it's gonna take me getting over the one that took me a long time to travel beyond. And when I do that, I can say, well, while I'm doing that, I can say, yo, y'all in my circle right now, and I am getting over this hurdle, and I'm not gonna wait till I'm past it to tell y'all to get over your hurdle. I'm not gonna wait till I'm done fighting to tell you to keep fighting. And as lyrical ones, that's where we are. We trying to remind folks to keep fighting, keep looking for the things that's gonna motivate you forward, keep listening for the person you will be to call you forward. Because the future affluent is the one motivating me. The future affluent, the future Alex is the one telling me to keep going, telling me there's more to do, there's that I have to want it. It's giving me the one sending me the codes. The game genie in my life is the one that's already been through it, right? Not the gym shark, the game shark, right? The game shark, the one that's got got the codes for every game that I'm gonna play. That's been through the level. That's they maybe didn't he didn't speed run through it, but that's all right because we can be methodical with it. And but the person who's sending me the way out is me who's already been there. And I've been the one motivating my past self because I wanted to be at this point and I worked to get to this point. And I was always going to be here because I can only speak from what is and what was. And everything that I'm saying, everything that I'm experiencing, everything that I will experience is truth also. And some of that is being revealed to me by the choices that I'm making. So if you want to hear from the person that you will be, keep listening, keep learning, and try not to be distracted by the messages of acquiring the external. Try not to be distracted by the walls, the ceilings, the barriers that industry, the system, that media will put up saying you can't be who you want to be. Say you can't be as strong as you want to be. You can't be as clever. You can't be as agile, as adaptable, as mobile, as emotionally, mentally flexible, saying that you can't be as spiritually powerful or divine. And all those messages are out there saying you can't win, you can't get even, you can't get over the game. Shout out to MJ, Barry Gordy.
For real. I don't know who said it first, but I know who said it best. Where there's a will, there's a way. Shout out to Goku. Cell Saga was raw.
I mean, Cell Saga is goaded.
But that's the thing, right? It's like, yeah, you're right. Like, don't doubt your ability to overcome, right? Like like I don't want people to think that they are defined by where they chose to work. You are a full being. You are a whole person. You are so much more than how you make your money. However you decide to do that, right? Like, you're loved, and if you don't believe you are, if you don't feel you are, you have to love you first. You have to love you first. Because in all the things that I've learned, knowing my own self worth, knowing my own value, communicating that and letting others know has been paramount. It has been the absolute need because it helps others build me up, reinforce who I am so I can continue to build me up and support myself as I need to and as I'm able to support others. It's a reciprocal thing. It's a circular thing. And Alpha, any final thoughts for the episode 93 of the Lyrical Ones?
Yeah, man, I'm here to take L's. I'm here to take heavy L's. I'm here to take heavy L's. Feel me? It's like I'm looking for the lessons. I'm looking for the losses. Because I'm not going to dwell on what is lost. I'm not gonna dwell on. I've already lived that life of dwelling on what I lost. I've already lived that life, and I have less energy to spare towards what is past. I have more energy to give towards my future. And so where I'm still at a point in my life where I have more years ahead of me than I do behind me. Only because at some point existence started. And since that point, I feel like I've been here, right? And whenever that started, there's a lot more time in the future. And I try to stay in that infinite dragon roll that I couldn't measure. I don't know what eternity looks like, but if I zoomed in real close on my molecular structure, I could keep zooming in and find infinity. So I can live in that right where I'm at. And the time it takes for me to travel between atoms is is scalable to the time it takes for me to travel between planets and travel between stars and travel between galaxies. And they're all bounded, right, by something, right? And if they're bonded by something and I'm bonded by something, then we are bonded by something. So when I say I mean we. And if I have more to learn, then we have more to learn, then you have more to learn, and there's more love to give as we we take these losses and learn from them.
Necessary. So necessary. Losses are super necessary. Like, super necessary. Um, I'm glad you said that because, yeah, every loss is an opportunity for you to advance, to gain so much insightfulness, to gain so much knowledge and education, not in the traditional scope, but in the real world applicable scope, because that's all we got. So, as we often do at this time, I do want to shout out that we did get a comment from Twitch. Elfer Broski just agreed with Outfluent and said true. Oh, there go, right there on the screen. You know,
Hey,
Elfer Broski came through right on. Um, but yeah, it is true. It's all true, and that's the point. We're trying to give that truth. So for everyone out there, love yourself. If you don't
we
know
love
how,
y'all.
learn how. Yeah, we love you. We love y'all. We love you. And, I love me. So I hope you love you too. Um, but, as we often do at this time.
One, 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 one.